Well, France 24's Clovis Casali is at the border of Syria and Jordan. That's now home to 1.3 million Syrian refugees. Clovis, this past year, fighting has slowed in Syria, in part due to the coronavirus pandemic. Tell us a bit more about what the situation is right now on the ground.
Indeed, and over the past decade, people here at the border have often been hearing gunshots shelling on the Syrian side of the border. But 10 years on, Bashar Assad still very much in charge. He's retaken large part of rebel-held areas. Behind me is the border. In that direction, barely 40 kilometers away, is the city of Deraa, the so-called cradle of the revolution, where the uprising began in 2011. And here on this border town in Jordan, a lot of people come from Deraa. They fled the violence, the widespread destruction, the persecution. Imagine hundreds of thousands of people crossing the border here into Jordan. And here, just behind me, is the Zaatari camp. At the peak of the violence and war, while you had 5,000 people a day arriving here. It's the largest Syrian refugee camp in the world, and it very much feels like a town in itself.
Clovis, over 1 million Syrian refugees are now living in Jordan. What's the situation like there for them, for example, at that Camp Zaatari, where you are?
Well, picture that this camp, Zaatari camp, well, 500,000 Syrians have lived here at some point during the past decade. Currently, there's an outbreak of COVID-19 cases, so the camp is under lockdown. Usually, the displaced Syrians here are allowed to leave, and when they get work permits, can work in other parts of Jordan. So, because of the pandemic, the camp is under lockdown. People can't leave. Visiting is, of course, limited. We got a brief access. We were allowed in briefly. We couldn't go into the homes, but we could speak with some of the representatives here, for instance, from the UNHCR, who run the camp alongside the Jordanian government. This Zaatari camp is possible thanks to funds from foreign nations, of course, like France, the United Kingdom, the United States, Qatar, a lot of efforts from the international community. A Zaatari camp feels like a town in itself, and you find here anything that you'd find in a normal town, if you will, such as shops, a school, a hospital, a sewage system. You have water systems here, irrigation systems, but of course the living conditions here are very hard. Families of 5 are given 15 square meter caravans to live in, and they try to decorate their homes like they can with what they find. The living conditions very hard here, of course, also because in the summer here the temperatures reach 45 degrees. And being in the camp, I can tell you what is rather shocking in many ways is the number of children. Many children born in the camp who've never seen Syria and who might never go to Syria.
Clovis, thank you for that. France 24's Clovis Casali reporting from the border of Syria and Jordan.